Hi, this is Ms. Pellegrin, and today we are going to be looking at creating our 7th grade math quick glance mini book. So it's a little review of everything we have done in 7th grade. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to assemble your book. So if you look, you can see there are directions on it, and it says to fold it down. So you're going to fold it down on that line, and then you're going to fold it over. And then you're going to staple it twice and cut on the dash line that is on the back. And so that where the dash line is on the back is where your instructions are as well. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and do that. Okay, so first thing we have is when we open up our book is the order of operations. Grouping parentheses and brackets is the first thing that we do, and we have an example problem to the right, and so we're going to do that example problem. Okay, so grouping parentheses and brackets, I see that, so I've got 2 plus 3, which is 5. And then I'm just going to bring the rest of my problem down. 5 times 9 minus 10 divided by 2, whoops, plus 3 squared. And I do realize that the writing here is very small, but we are fitting all of 7th grade onto the front and back of a piece of paper. So, okay, E is for exponents, and I do see an exponent. I see 3 squared. So I'm just going to bring down the rest of my problem. 5 times 9 minus 10 divided by 2 plus 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. Okay, then I'd multiply and divide from left to right. Okay, if I had division first, I would do the division part first, but I see the multiplication first. So 5 times 9 is 45 minus, and then 10 divided by 2 is 5. Bringing down that minus sign, and plus 9. And then add and subtract from left to right. So notice it says add first, but the first thing I have is subtraction. So I'm going to do that first. 45 minus 5 is 40. And then 40 plus 9 is 49. Okay, so the next thing that I see is I see absolute value. Absolute value is the distance from 0 on a number line. So negative 6 is 6 units from 0. Minus the absolute value of negative 6 is minus 6 or negative 6. Negative 6 is 6 units from 0, but the negative sign or the minus sign on the outside of the bars attaches to the number. Sorry. So the absolute value of negative 2 plus 7 is positive 5. Absolute value of positive 5 should keep the sign of the greater absolute value minus the absolute value of 3. And so the absolute value of 5 is 5 minus the absolute value of 3 is 3. So 5 minus 3 is 2. Okay. Next we see integers. So integers, the rules apply to all positive and negative numbers. Okay, adding integers. When we have the same sign, we add and we keep the sign. And when we have different signs, we subtract and keep the sign of the number with the highest absolute value. So we always keep whatever sign has the greatest absolute value. So here we have the same sign, negative 8 plus negative 5. So they have the same sign. So we're adding 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and keeping that sign. So that sign is a negative 13. Okay. And then on the next one, they have different signs, so we know we're subtracting. Let's write that sign first. Keep the sign on the greater absolute value. It is going to be a negative. And then 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, negative 3. Okay, the next one, subtracting integers. A lot of people say keep, change, change. Some people say zip, zap. Some way to remember. The way that I said it is it was a negative 2 minus 8. So it's a negative 2 and a negative 8 that the sign is considered to be in front of there. So this is negative 2, this is negative 8, so they have the same sign. We're keeping the sign of the greater absolute value. It's negative. And 8 plus 2 is 10. If you want to look at that keep, change, change rule, you can. Negative 2, and so we change the minus sign to a plus sign, and then we change the 8 to a negative 8, just so you can see the signs that both of them are negative numbers. So you get the same thing, negative 10. Okay. So when we're multiplying and dividing integers, we multiply or divide as we normally do. And then on this one, it says use a triangle trick, which I had never heard of before, but it was kind of cool, so I'd like to show it to you. Okay, so in the first one, we have a negative 4 times a positive 5. Okay? And so if I cover up the negative, because there's a negative sign, pretend that's covered, and I cover up a positive sign because the 5 is positive, what I'm left with is a negative sign. And so therefore, my answer is going to be, could cover that up. There we go, cover it up. Okay. And so therefore, my answer is going to be negative. And 4 times 5 is 20. So then let me erase the next one. Okay, and so the next one we have a negative 20, so I'm going to cover up the negative sign. Oh, and yeah. So if they were both negative, you would cover up the two negative signs. Negative and negative, and the one that you're left with is a positive. Okay, you would have to know that a positive and a positive is what you normally do, and therefore it is equal to a positive. So it won't work with that. Okay, so a negative divided by a positive is a negative. And 20 divided by 10 is 2. Okay, so let's go on to our next slide, our next page. So when we're dealing with decimals, okay, we still have to follow integer rules. So when we're adding and subtracting decimals, follow your integer rules. So you could keep, change on this one, or the way we always did it, we said there's a double negative right there, they're right next to each other. Sorry about that, my dogs are playing in the background. Okay, so double negative means it is positive. So this is actually 4 plus 0.3. And so we have to line up our decimals. So 4, and then 0 is the whole number. So there's not one, but we're going to put a placeholder there. And then 0.3. Okay, so our decimals are lined up. Let's put the placeholders up here as well. So there would be a decimal and a 0 behind any whole number. So we line it up, and that gives us 4.3. Check our signs. We had a double negative there, so it was just an addition problem. So our answer is 4.3. Next one, multiply. So the next one, we're multiplying a negative 0.02 times 3.1. Okay, and so we just multiply like normal. Okay, so I like to put the bigger number at the top. That's just my personal way that I like to do it. Okay, so the 2 and the 1 have to be lined up together. And that would be how it would normally be set up. No lining up of decimals. 2, and then there's a 0, which I don't really need. I'll put it. Okay. And so 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. Okay. And if you didn't do the 0 times 1 is 0 and 0 times 3 is 0 to write those two zeros, then you would have to count. We've got 1, 2, 3 digits behind the decimal. So we have to have 1, 2, well there has to be 3 digits, so there has to be a 0 there behind the decimal. If you had added your zeros, you would have had the 0 in front, which is fine as well. And then remember, it's a negative times a positive, integer rules, so it is a negative answer. I like to look at that usually first, so we don't forget it. Okay, and then lastly, if we are dividing, inside goes out. So if we have to do it without a calculator, we would say 0.05 is the inside. So in other words, it would end up being our denominator on the outside, and then our numerator is on the inside. 0.4. Right. I always set it up like this so I know what kind of answer I should kind of get. Okay. But that doesn't really help me in this case. Okay, so move the outside decimal. So it has to go 1, 2 places. So the inside one has to also go 2 places. 1, 2. Okay, so there's the decimal. Add a 0. Bring that decimal straight up. And so then I have 5 into 40. And 5 will go into 40 8 times. So it goes in there 8 times. This way I could do the subtraction. Okay, so 8 times 5 is 40. Subtract is 0. Yay, all done. That's our answer. And then integer rules says a negative times a positive, or divided by a positive is a negative. And we can put our little triangle there if you want to do that trick. Positive, negative, negative. You had a negative. We cover that up. We had a positive. We cover that up. And there's our answer. It is a negative. That would be a good way to remember. Okay, go on to the next video for continuing on with fraction operations.